Welcome back, lovely sisters. We are talking about how we can encourage our husbands to lead in the home, especially if we are not sensing a sense of direction or guidance from our husbands in how things should be run and what the long-term plan is. So we're going to look at how a lot of this is actually our perception and not as much a fact. So it really helps if we can get rid of the perception and understand that a lot of it is just how we are processing it from our viewpoint, and that our husbands are in fact leading the home. Of course, there are times or husbands who don't lead their homes very strongly or don't offer any sort of leadership, and that is a problem. But I think this video will help you as well to understand how you can encourage your husband to be a stronger leader and to be more assertive in his role. So I think a really good analogy will be to look at the husband and wife as a representation of Christ and the bride. So we're going to do a little bit of history into the Old Testament and see how the analogy plays out and how we can learn a few lessons from the analogy of the Israelites wandering to the wilderness and the bride of Christ. So I always pray before I start these videos. I pray that the Lord will give me the wisdom to say helpful words and speak His truth, be faithful to His truth. And what came to my mind was the story of the Israelites wandering through the desert and all their grumblings, and how the Lord looked after them, how they worshipped Him and then fell away, and how He time and time again showed His faithfulness to them, but they were unfaithful and dissatisfied and complaining. So what interested me was the aspects of the Israelites actually being very well cared for by the Lord. He would provide them water, He would provide them this very special, delicious food that fell from heaven, that they could gather in the mornings and the evenings, and this is what they had on a regular basis. But like all humans, they got tired of the repetitiveness and the sameness of the food, and they started to complain, and they grew dissatisfied, and they longed for the exciting flavors that they used to have back in Egypt, and all the delicious, tantalizing things that they could actually have a variety of choices. They grew dissatisfied with this diet that the Lord was providing, and He was providing it miraculously, but because they were accustomed to it, they grew used to it and actually went as far as to complain about it. And so it is with the wife. It's quite sad if you think about it. Our husbands are there for us. They are providing for us. They are quietly stewarding our homes. They are being the strong anchor. As time progresses, we get so accustomed to it. We become spoiled in a way, and we start expecting things from them and wanting them to do things for us. And even when they do those things, we're, a day or two later, we want something else, or we decide, no, that wasn't quite what we wanted something else, or he didn't quite do it in the right way. So there's this unthankfulness, there's this breeding dissatisfaction that is present in the wife's heart. And the reason for this is, to an extent, it's quite practical. There is a lot of drudgery in a mom's life. The daily task of maintaining the home and running things. There are so many things we have to do repetitively and take care of and do to the same standard every day. So that can wear a woman down. Obviously, the husband also has these pressures every day to maintain, and the same repetitiveness. That's just how life is. But because we're being taken care of by our husbands, we can start to think of them providing our entertainment in a way, our excitement in a way. We look to them to ensure that our lives stay interesting. When we develop a sense of boredom, we start to blame them in our minds. It's their fault because they're not being romantic enough, or they're not surprising us enough with fun things. We start expecting things from them and grumbling in our hearts against them. eventually it comes out and we start saying those things. So with the perspective we have on the children of Israel wandering through the desert, we see the injustice of the complaining and the grumbling. And we see that all that was required of them was to follow and to be thankful and to continue daily, faithfully completing the tasks and continuing the journey according as He prescribed for them to do things. And that is what we have today. We have the New Testament, which lays out for us how to live our lives, how to relate to one another. It's quite simple, and we just have to stick with that and do that daily for our husbands. And our husbands, being a type of Christ for us, are our leaders and dictators of the home. So they will prescribe to us how they want us to run the home, what their desire is, and if they don't verbalize it, we have this sixth sense as women to know and perceive what the underlying desires of our husbands are, and we can pick up on those things and attempt to fulfill them. So in this way, we should busy ourselves with doing those things and be thankful for what we actually have. You know, the 21st century is actually a very comfortable, easy time in history to be living. If we look back in history, we see a lot of disease and war and struggles, tragedies. Today, probably the worst that we get is natural disasters, which we don't know how to control. But for the most part, poverty is at an all-time low, and the majority of us married women live fairly comfortable lives. We have nothing to complain about. But as is human nature, and as we see from the Israelites' behavior towards God, the tendency always is to complain or to grow dissatisfied, especially when there's repetition, when there's drudgery. We find something to be unhappy with. So the wife can start thinking of things her husband could do for her. She starts to make little hints. She starts to mope a little bit. She gets moody, and eventually she starts complaining. And this can happen out of a subconscious desire to make the husband be a bit more vigorous in his leading, to be a bit more assertive, and to have more plans, and not to be comfortable to, being stuck in a rut. This can make a woman feel that there is no vision for the home, there is no purpose for, a greater purpose for the drudgery of a daily life. And it can be very discouraging because you don't have that purpose, that goal to work towards as a family and as a couple. So if there is no greater goal to work towards, the wife can feel a desire to pressure her husband to do something. It may come out in strange ways. She'll express dissatisfaction about things and maybe even struggle to express what it is. And no doubt this will just confuse her husband and frustrate him. Knowing that sometimes all that is needed is a little bit of leadership, a bit of direction, is helpful because it simplifies it. But what does the wife do about this? Because as the one who's being led, the one who's following, she cannot dictate to her husband, lead me now because I need to be led. She needs to find a different way. So at the end of this video, I'll give you some practical ideas on how to encourage your husband to be a stronger leader. I thought it'd be very interesting to look into how the church, even today, the church has a similar mentality. As the bride of Christ as a whole, all the believers, we have this hunger and desire to be touched by the Lord, to be noticed by Him, to have an interaction with Him, to be spoken to, and for Him to be intimately involved in our lives and take an interest in all the little details of our lives. Isn't that just how wives are? We desire this focused attention from our husbands, and that is what the church is also longing for. All our prayers are about, the Lord must guide us in everything we do. We want words of wisdom from Him. We want commands from Him so that we can know, oh, this is what He wants us to do. We feel special if the Lord gives us special instructions, and we feel very reassured and set on a path that is worth walking regardless of the sacrifice, as opposed to just wandering and meandering and not knowing what the point of it all is. A lot of life is just like that, but having a goal and a purpose makes the sacrifices worth it. So often when we have a long dry spell where we don't get any special dreams from the Lord, or we don't really hear from Him, or we don't get anything from reading the scriptures, our prayers seem to be ineffectual. It can feel like this long dry spell in the desert, and we just long to hear from Him, and we just want Him to be there and want to feel His presence. This is actually a time in which we must continue in the little things, because He has laid out for us a way in which to live, and we must just be patient. We have to continue in those things. We shouldn't worry about Him not speaking to us. He will speak to us when it is needed. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm doing something wrong, that's why He's not speaking to me. Just stay faithful, stay patient in the simple things. As a wife, 2 wives who feel their husbands are not leading, or are not giving direction, or are not communicating properly with them what is to be expected and what the long-term goal is. Our job is to remain focused on what is clearly laid out before us already to do, as monotonous as it can be, to keep at it faithfully and patiently. That is the way we show trust in our husbands. We show them that we believe, even though it doesn't look like He's doing anything to lead things forwards, that He has thought about this. He has given it thought, and in time there will be a progression, or there will be a decision He comes to for the next step or the next phase. And sometimes He doesn't clearly know yet, and it really doesn't help to put pressure on Him to make it happen when the time is not right. So wait for Him to make the move, wait for Him to make the decision, and continue patiently in your work. So how to encourage Him to have that oomph He needs to lead the family, have that conviction, and be more assertive in the home and how He leads. You see, what can happen is, as the leader, it can be somewhat lonely or tiring to be the one always making the decisions and having so much responsibility and accountability resting on your shoulders. And that is not to say men don't want to do this, but it can be tiring. And that is where we as wives must stay attuned to their needs and what they need. When they are tired, they can slump, at the wheel. They might unconsciously lose courage, lose conviction, or just go through a phase where they're reanalyzing things, or just not too sure about the direction forward. And it can take time to reassess and pivot if needed. So we as wives need to be patient with this process, and at the same time it is our job to encourage them and to be that energy they need to regain their courage. So as a wife, you would know what your husband likes and what really blesses him and what encourages him. Most of the time men respond to simple things like a special meal being made for him, certain savories or pastries that he really likes. Go all out and make him a special meal just to bless him, just for him to enjoy. Or sometimes he needs you to just be there quietly with him. If you see it's the end of the day, he's sitting still reading a book, you can go sit there with him and he might start talking to you. He might start sharing some of his thoughts. But be sure that you're present and you're not busy with something else. Be present, attentive, and try to be encouraging and cheerful. He doesn't need you to help him lead. He simply needs you to encourage him and to have a uplifting view so that he has the courage to take the next step. And of course, being intimate in the bedroom, adding a little spice in the bedroom can really help lift a man's mood and make his problem seem a whole lot smaller. Don't neglect that part of your marriage. But at the end of the day, you know him, you know what he likes and how he functions. So get creative with encouraging him in those little things, and just see how it gives him a little spark and encourages him to take the next step. I hope this helps you, ladies. I have been thinking about this one for quite a long time and concluded that our role is always supportive. It's always channeling our energies into our husbands to help them grow stronger and nurture them. A woman's role is very nurturing. Through practicing nurturing things for our husbands, we will become more and more fulfilled in our role and more just better at doing it. So each of us has a special quality. Each woman has a special quality. And that is usually why you marry a specific man, because he needs that specific quality. And it can take some time to find out how to make those two things work together. But I trust if you patiently try different things, make small adjustments as you go, you will find a way in which the two of you will work together as an amazing team. There is no way to change, there is no way to improve unless we pray and unless we go to the Lord and ask for those things that we need to do the things we need to do. Nothing good can come from us except through Jesus. So we have to pray and we have to ask. If you enjoy my videos, don't forget to subscribe and like, and also comment down below any thoughts you have and any feedback, your story, introduce yourself. I'd love to know who you all are. I'm also very excited to announce that my blog is almost ready to be launched. I'm just finalizing a few little tweaks and details, and then I'll be launching it, so I'll announce it on all my platforms. I like to see the blog as a place where we can dive a little deeper into our roles as wives and as women, have a more thoughtful approach to everything. So I'm sharing my thoughts as I'm learning in this journey. So the Lord bless your marriage, and I will catch you next week again. Love you lots. Bye.